Hi everyone, let's talk about Lowrider. Swedish stoner rock and stoner metal heavy psych outfit Lowrider. This is their first album in 20 years. Yeah. For stoner rock, Lowrider weren't really that, impactful on the genre. However, they were more or less like a really good underground band. Like if you knew Lowrider, you were like, oh, he's an actual fan. I digress. Lowrider, however, have paved a way for themselves with their debut album Ode to I.O., where the riffs on that LP are incredibly juicy. They're there, and they're good. However, that record and this new album, Refractions, they're comparable, but I wouldn't say they're extremely similar. For one, I think Lowrider have gotten a little more ambitious with their instrumentation, but they've also consolidated yet elongated. Now that might sound confusing, I know, but what I mean by that is instead of 10 tracks compared to the debut album, this album has 6. And this album also features some of their longest songs to date. You have an 8-minute track as well as the 11-minute closing track, Pipe Rider. An amazing song, by the way, but we will get to that. Pretty much this is everything you need and nothing you don't. There's no quick 1-minute track on this album. It's pretty much straight to the point, stoner rock, stoner metal, heavy psych, goodness with riffs that are spacey, meditative, could have used a little more punch, but very much still quite heavy. They're also quite visceral too. I mean, there's great riffs on all of these songs, but to highlight some of the best, you can go to the opening track, Red River, as well as Ode to Ganymede, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This track in particular actually features this amazing organ that embellishes the riffs that are playing on top of it very well towards the latter end of the song. It is a great moment that is very similar to the last track where there are some strings that are added towards the final crescendo of the song. Speaking of Pipe Rider, this track in particular, again, 11 minutes long, the band's longest song ever, and it does not get boring, it does not get tiresome or tedious anywhere. Nowhere on this track is it meandering or tiresome. The riffs kind of build on top of one another. Sometimes there's a little bit of a spaciness to the track, but then you have the instrumentation kind of bow out towards, again, the latter end of the track, and then it builds up to this amazing moment of finality for this song and the record, and it is just, it is so good. Again, like I said earlier, this album can be compared to their debut, but it isn't really on the same playing field because this album is more spacey, more cerebral, more meditative. The riffs are slow, they're churning, they take their time. However, the payout for all of these songs are great, like immensely great. Pretty much the only song that I'm not head over heels for in the track listing is the track Old Mule PEPE, the 4th track on this album, where the guitar riffs kind of feel a little crunchy in some way, kind of feels out of place compared to the rest of the songs on this album, but nevertheless a good track, just not great. And again, there are moments on this album where I feel like the riffs could be a little more visceral and the mix could have been a little bit better, but for what we get, this is a great stoner rock album. Also, one thing I gotta point out are the vocals on this album. The vocals are great for a stoner rock album. They're not annoyingly mixed to the front or it's super, obnoxious, but they're not mixed to the back like they're forgettable. They are very much a part of the instrumentation, unlike the debut album where I felt like the vocals could have been mixed a little bit better, but I mean that album still, again, comparable, but in a different realm. Where I feel like on this record, they've gotten a little more comfortable with the vocals, so they kind of put it even closer to the mix. I think it's a great idea. Could have been used a little bit more as well, but there are some songs on this album that just don't even feature vocals at all. It's just pretty much an instrumental passage. However, there is one thing on all of these tracks that are great, and it's the drums. The drums on this record are phenomenal. They are so thick, man. They are, they're heavy, they're brooding, but they're not to the point where they're overly involved. Like, they're not the forefront of all of these songs. They're very much a great complement to the slow and heavy riffs. The last thing I'll add to this very confused review of this album is that the guitar riffs, jumping back to the guitar riffs on this album, they don't really stay for one entire track. There are multiple riffs in a single song, but not to the point where there's like a riff on top of a riff on top of a riff, to the point where there's just like 17 different riffs on top of one another. The riffs kind of shift and evolve as the song progresses. You get these, I guess, more involved riffs, but you also get some slower riffs. You have some great bass lines on this record too that are worked into the riffs on their own. And along with everything that goes on within a song, you have ever-evolving tracks that feature amazing drum rhythms and bass lines that are to never be forgotten about. Vocals that are great as well, and the mixing, again, could have been heavier, but overall leads to an album that is just great for a stoner rock album. So if you're going to check this album out, I asked you to do actually a little bit more than that. Check out their debut album. It needs a lot of love and a lot of attention. But for me personally, this album, Refractions, is a very solid A-. Definitely a highlight amongst the rest of the albums this year. Definitely something that will stand out amongst the rest of the albums within the year-end season. A great album nonetheless. However, I am curious to know, are you going to check this album out? And if you have, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this album down below. Let me know what albums you want me to review next, and that is it. Like, comment, share, do whatever you want. Let me know how I can improve future videos down below. Remember, this is only my opinion because music is subjective.